It's my task to say good morning to everybody. Michael Murphy is my name. I am the president of EUA at the moment, and I chair the Teaching and Learning Steering Group. And I welcome you all to the last of our plenary sessions, which has a very positive title, Set for Success. And the background to the session is that, of course, in the coming years, our staff, our students, our graduates, our lifelong learners will all need to be very well versed in a digital environment. And that means that universities need to embed generic digital skills, sector-specific digital skills. They must all be addressed in our education and training programs. So we must enable staff and students to manage their digital identities, to train them to use digital technologies in a responsible way and in a safe way. So the panel this morning will discuss how universities can support staff in obtaining digital skills that they need, ensuring a more active and responsible role for students as contributors and co-creators in their own learning, all in a digital environment. So that's the topic. The format is simple. It's a panel discussion. Our experts have been spared the need to prepare PowerPoint presentations this morning. And I will begin with some questions. We will have some polls to establish your experience in the audience and your views on the topic. And then we will very much rely on your questions and your comments for the remainder of the session. So the quality of this session will depend on the quality and number of your questions and comments at the end of the day. So please use the Q&A function. We've got three eminent panelists this morning, and I will introduce them to you. First on my screen is Jan Eden, who is Vice President for Organisation, Quality and Digital Management at Düsseldorf University of Applied Sciences. He's been there since December 2020. And prior to that, he was responsible for digital studies at the University of Cologne. And here he addressed student information systems, digital teaching and testing, digital competence programs for both students and staff. And his academic background is in linguistics. Secondly, on my screen, I have Kolbrún, Lára, Kjartansdóttir, who must be from Iceland with a name like that. Kolbrún is Vice President of the National Union of Icelandic Students. She's currently finishing a Master's in Education degree. And since she started in university in 2016, she's been a passionate spokesperson for students' rights. She's been on the Student Council for the University of Iceland from 2018 to 20. So you're very welcome, Kolbrún. And last but not least, we have Nancy Convalinca, who is Vice Rector for Academic Coordination and Quality at the National Distance Education University in Madrid, UNED. In her academic background, she's a cultural anthropologist, and the main focus of her teaching is the anthropology of kinship. So I guess she's an expert on how to make digital friends. We'll discover that in a moment. So you're all very welcome, and thank you for joining us. And I might kick off the conversation with a simple question. How can universities foster a whole of institution culture in which digitally enhanced learning and teaching is fully embedded? Or is it something that institutions should even strive for? So let's start with Jan in Düsseldorf. What do you think?
Thank you, Michael. Well, I think the starting point for answering this question should always be teaching and learning quality, because basically the main idea is not to teach digitally because we can, but to achieve the right learning outcomes for students. So for some institutions, on-site formats might be the best way. Whereas for other institutions, distance learning, digitally enhanced learning is obviously the major format. But in the end, to foster a culture for digital teaching and learning, we always have to look at teaching quality. And this is where digital teaching formats come in naturally for some lectures or seminars.
Okay, well, that's a straightforward start. Kolbrún, do you agree, or have you a different approach?
I agree with the. Sorry, that was a lot of information. I feel that each school has, of course, their own culture and national culture within the school. And to foster digitally enhanced learning and teaching, the environment needs to be open and welcoming for new experiences, as well as quality, like Jan mentioned. And my experience is that the new generation of students have quite a lot of experience with digital networks and digital learning. But my concern is mostly for teachers who might lack the experience and skills needed to endorse an effective learning environment. So to foster a whole institution-wide culture, the institution need to focus on teaching teachers the digital skills needed for digital learning.
Okay, Kolbrún, thank you for an opening. Nancy, you have a lot of students who are not on campus.
Exactly. We are a large university with nearly 250,000 students. From the start, we have been always and only a distance education university. So we do have a whole institution culture that does this. Of course, at the beginning, we sent out printed materials in envelopes by mail to the students. So everything that is online has been embraced quite happily by our professors because it's easier than what we were doing before. So digitally enhanced learning is not an issue with us. It's just natural. What I do think we need to overcome in most of education is the idea that real teaching is in classroom teaching, and the rest of it is a substitute for that. There are different ways to teach, and they're all valid. And I think that is what we really have to overcome. Both kinds of teaching can be done well or badly. And as professors, we want to give more to our students, and all the things that can be done online help us to do that. So like Kolbrún said, we need to prepare teachers to be able to do the teaching online and with digitally enhanced teaching and learning as part of their normal life, not as something different from what they feel like is real teaching in a classroom.
You've prompted a question, Kolbrún. You are a distance education institution with a lot of experience in this domain. And of course, we're on traditional campuses, or most of us are on traditional campuses, trying to embrace skills that you have had for a long time and that have only gradually and recently become a feature of traditional. Do many universities come to you, traditional universities, seeking advice from you and seeking partnership with you? And to the other two speakers, have you thought in your institutions of working with experienced large distance education institutions as you try to change the culture on traditional campuses? So have you had new friends recently, Nancy?
Yes, especially when COVID hit. We started a platform with all of our resources to put all of our resources out there so that all the universities who suddenly had to go online and had never done it before could do it without having to invent it themselves. And so we had a great big platform with our Ministry of Universities and with another one of the universities, the private open education university, the WALC, and we were able to help a lot of universities with that. So yes, we've been happy to do that because it doesn't take away from us, it just helps.
New partnerships in Germany, Jan?
Well, as Nancy said, digital teaching formats should not be treated as substitute for traditional on-site teaching. But in this case, or in this situation, in this pandemic situation, it was a substitute, obviously. We had to switch to a mostly digital learning, teaching and learning environment quickly. And so we learned from the distance university in Hagen here in Germany. So we were in a similar position. We had to learn from others what they already had experience with. But in the end, after the pandemic, we also intend to differentiate between digital and on-site formats in a meaningful way, looking at the didactic advantages and disadvantages of the respective format, and not treating digital formats as second-class citizens in the curriculum. This is very important because, as I said in the beginning, it's about the learning outcomes and not about what the teachers would prefer to have.
And Kolbrún, not too many countries near you in Iceland. New partnerships?
Not that I'm aware of, but we have been crossing over to Europe more in the past few years. But in Iceland, there are 7 universities, and 4 of them are in rural areas of Iceland, while 3 of them are in the capital area of Reykjavik. And the private universities are the rural ones, while the University of Iceland and University of Akureyri are the 2 governmentally funded universities. And the private universities have been able to set up a more successful digital learning environment, while the University of Iceland has been quite slow to develop a successful distance learning environment, because their view is quite traditional from what I understand. But of course, during the pandemic, everyone was forced to shut down and pick up new traditions that they were not familiar with. And I have been teaching a bit myself at the University of Iceland, and every staff member was offered a digital skill learning session, but it was an offer, not a requirement. So a lot of the teachers simply felt they didn't have the need to attend the sessions. Well, it really came down to the quality of teaching, and the teachers who went to the sessions developed a much closer sense with the digital learning environment and the connection with students through it, rather than the teachers who didn't feel the need.
And that's why the institutional culture is has been the first question to the panel. Let's do a poll. Let's find out what the audience are thinking. See what their experience has been. There's a poll up, and the question is, what, in your view, are the most urgently needed measures to support teachers and students in developing digital skills? And the options are there. Revised institutional strategies and policies, compulsory upskilling courses for teachers. Well, that's an interesting question. Enhanced professional development opportunities. That sounds a bit more voluntary. An open dialogue with stakeholder consultations, or other reasons. So if you just think for a moment, reflect on those options and, of course, other, and we'll take a second to get a sense of the priorities as you see them based on your experience. And to say that we're going to have a coalition government at the end of this is a rather obvious statement. It seems that all of these are essentially part of the solution. Yep, I think we probably have a statistically valid sample on the screen right now from 100 attendees. Okay, so coming back now to my 3 colleagues on the panel, is there anything surprising on this screen, on the results of the polling? would you have voted differently? Let me see. Who? Nancy.
I'm not sure how I should be seeing the results of the poll. I was told not to touch the poll column.
Oh, yeah, I think you can touch it, but I said don't press any button. Apologies. So if you open, what you will actually see is that the audience is practically equally divided among the four specific options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the idea of compulsory upskilling courses, well, you do need to be sure that your professors can teach, just like you should be able to be sure that they can teach in an in-person classroom, okay? Nobody likes the word compulsory. However, I, as a professor, understand that I need to be able to show that I have the skills to do something. I would like to think that I will do it voluntarily, and nobody will need to sit down and say, why didn't you do this course? You don't know how to do this yet. But yeah, I think whether it's compulsory or voluntary, I think we all need to concern ourselves with our own development in this area.
Okay. Would you agree, Jan?
Yeah, basically, I just flipped through the other responses in the chat, and I like to I do agree with Mats Kullhed from Sweden. Hi, Mats. That promoting a culture of collegial discussions about teaching and learning at the departmental level is one of the most urgent measures, because peer-led discussion forums are probably more engaging than compulsory trainings by the rectorate. And I think it's a question of culture, not in acquiring the skills, but accepting that the skills are required by teaching staff. And so the culture can only be fostered at the departmental level. And so I would, as I said, agree with Mats here.
Okay, Kolbrún.
Yeah, there's not much to add, because I agree with Nancy that it shouldn't be compulsory, but it should be able to help you as a teacher enhance yourself and for new teaching opportunities. And I was just flipping through the comments as well. These are very great. And just like Maria is saying now, that the focus on pedagogy, and me I'm a teacher student, so I'm learning to be a teacher, and the pedagogy is so important because it depends on like the development of the students that we are teaching. How do we address them? How can we enhance their learning through their experiences? And that is something that affects the quality of a teacher, not just the teaching. That a teacher should be able to teach well, regardless of what the environment is.
Yeah. I guess it also falls into the domain that is now becoming increasingly discussed across Europe, and that is the need for academic assessment reform, reforming how we assess research and staff on much broader criteria than historically. And digital capabilities and engagement with the digital agenda should obviously fall into the design of benchmarks. And our incentivization system within the institutions needs to capture staff and student engagement with the agenda. So not compulsory, but certainly culturally incentivized. So there's no disagreement between the panel and what the audience is thinking. Okay, that's a good start. Now, let's see. A question to the panel, which would begin with the premise that our students, of course, are at the heart of the learning process. but I guess the teacher leads the orchestra. How can we support teachers better in developing their quality digital learning for their students, that engages the students and enables the students to obviously attain their learning outcomes? In practice, what works? What have you found to work in your institutions to support staff effectively? Now, Kolbrún, you haven't been up first yet for any questions, so we'll throw that to you to begin with.
Thank you. I probably have the least teaching experience here, but from what I can tell, teachers seem to be under a lot of pressure to get these academic points and research points, and they have to teach a certain amount, at least it is in Iceland, that they have to teach a certain amount to be able to get X many research points to do their academic research. And I feel like that can be a hindrance for teachers to be able to do their research fully. But like I said, I have the least experience with academic teaching here. So I would love to hear what Jan and Nancy have to say about the matter.
I think you've just spoken to the comment I've made on academic assessment reform. But Jan, you have a lot of experience. And
yeah, thank you. Well, on an institutional level, I guess we first need an error-tolerant culture to encourage teaching experiments, because many teachers rely on their traditional formats just because they are a little afraid maybe of the outcome with teaching experiments, with new formats. And of course, it takes work. It takes a lot of preparation to create new formats, digitally enhanced formats. And for this, we need a flexible load of the teaching, a flexible calculation of the teaching load for those new formats. We need additional bonuses, so to speak, for preparing material. And we also need to foster a sharing culture based on Creative Commons licensed educational resources, open educational resources, which have taken hold in small areas maybe, but many teachers, many teaching staff still prepare their own course material and only their own material. And this is obviously a lot of work which might be redundant. So by sharing material, a lot of teaching staff and their students can use high quality material. And also the institutions need to provide state-of-the-art platforms to share this content in a legal manner, with respect to the Creative Commons licenses. That's basically what we can do as organizations. But as I said before, the peer culture, or the culture among peers with respect to quality teaching is very important here too.
Thanks, Jan. Nancy?
Yes, I'd like to share two what I think are best practices at our university, and then two problems that we need to solve still. The two best practices are, well, of course, we are a large university, and we have about 10-hour a day service of assistance with any computer or online or technical problems, okay? It's both for students and for staff. So if I'm working on my online course and there's something that I don't know how to do, I just pick up the phone and call. And in 2 minutes, I've got someone there looking at my computer with me through sharing the computer, and they're helping me with that. So that makes it really easy for me to do a lot of things and to try and do new things that I haven't done before. The other thing we have that's a best practice is a really successful University Institute for Distance Education that provides a lot of courses that I can choose from whenever I want to and have time to be able to look at something new that I think might be useful for a course. Or I can ask for a course that they don't have that I would like them to have. The two things that we really need, and I think this is probably important across all universities, are time and flexibility. Jan was already mentioning this with the idea of flexibility of workloads if you're developing courses. The overload of administrative bureaucratic work that we have right now, combined with the research responsibilities, makes it really hard for a professor to sit down for even a few hours and just think about their courses and what they want to do with them. So without this time to learn and think about options, to experiment and to create, it's really hard to advance in this direction. So we need to somehow lighten that bureaucratic administrative load and make it possible for us to have that time. The other urgent thing is flexibility. I know this is not the same case as a lot of European countries, but in Spain, we have an evaluation system for our degrees that is very rigid and inflexible. So say that I want to change the way I'm doing my final exam. It's going to take me nearly 2 years to put that change through the system and get it approved, right? Imagine that I want to change 2 parts of my course. Instead of studying this, we're going to study that. The same thing, 2 years to get it pushed through. We have one example. One of our degrees did a pilot of doing their final degree paper as an online recorded presentation using multimedia. That's wonderful. The students have to plan what they're going to do in 20 minutes, record it, do it, share what they're going to share, show their work, etc., etc. And it's a really good way to get students to prepare for future work doing things like this. We were allowed to do the pilot, but now we have to stop doing it until we get the modification pushed through in 2 years. We need flexibility to be able to change things.
But Nancy, now, is that flexibility within the power of the institution, or is the inflexibility imposed from the outside?
It's imposed from the ministry and the evaluation agencies, right?
Okay, so let's hope that the Commission's new strategy for Europe's universities, which calls on member states to do a lot of reform, will gain some traction. Okay, there's a lot of activity in the chat, so maybe I should go back to the audience for a session, maybe a poll question, give people an opportunity to formally tell us what they're thinking. So here we are. We have a question. What are the main challenges in your experience in recent times resulting from digitally enhanced learning and teaching? And the first option there is the social dimension of the digital skills gap among students. Access, I guess, quality concerns, security, ethical and legal concerns, costs, different needs and preferences of students and staff, opposing needs, others. So, what do you think? What do you regard as the primary challenges right now? And let's see how the bars. Now, this one isn't. We'll just give it a moment until we have a statistically valid sample. It seems that quality concerns and different priorities between students and staff are top of this poll. Security and ethical concerns are well behind, and interestingly, cost doesn't have many followers this morning. Jan, what do you think of this experience across Europe?
Well, I would second the subject of quality concerns in a broad sense, because not only do we lack high quality open educational resources, as I said before, but also some digitally enhanced formats are not really enhanced in any meaningful way. So we see a lot of pre-recorded lectures without any accompanying interactive sessions, and this is digital, obviously, but it's not really enhanced. And if you see this in terms of quality, then we obviously have a problem here. And with respect to the opposing needs and preferences, I don't think they are necessarily opposed, but they are certainly different. And the different perspectives of students and teaching staff on digital skills, on the labor market, on society in general, is very visible when it comes to teaching and learning, to digital teaching and learning, because students expect to be prepared for a labor market, whereas the teaching staff sometimes does not take this perspective into account, and so has a very different view of required digital skills, maybe just related to their own teaching, but not really to society in general. So these two answers, which are the top answers in the poll, are also what I think about when it comes to challenges for digitally enhanced learning and teaching.
Okay, now we have on our screen, we have two professors and we have a student. The student perspective on this, Kolbrún, different needs and preferences among the two groups. That surprise?
No, I'm not surprised by that, because as a student, we have different ways of seeing the course material than the teacher, and the course material is new for us. The format may be new for us, but it shouldn't be new for the teacher. They have been doing it for years. But if it is suddenly online, then everything is new for the teacher as well. And then everything is new for everyone. For there to be less surprises in these needs, there need to be an open discussion between the teachers and students. And that is like my favorite way of evaluating teachers' courses and learning in general, to talk, have an open discussion. What can we improve and how? Because usually the students have quite good ideas on how to improve the teaching and learning environment. But like Nancy said earlier, the system for changes takes way too long. When the changes that students propose are finally through, the students might be graduated. And then there's a whole new generation of students who might have different views and needs to put through. So that is, of course, like the system changes take way too long.
Of course, this is all a measure of the reality of student-centeredness of the approach to learning, real or theoretical. Nancy.
Thank you. I might not have a lot to add to this, because being a distance university, the students who come to us are the ones who want to do things the way we do them. So we don't necessarily have that. Although, you know, of course, our student representatives are, of course, always giving us suggestions. And one of the things I have noticed is that whereas professors tend to want the students to be self-directed and autonomous, and our courses are created so that the student can just take the course and do it with the online course, with the interaction with the professor, et cetera, often the students ask us to be more taken by the hand and led, especially in their first year, okay? So that's one of the things where we try to get people to be self-directed, perhaps a little bit more than they would prefer to right at the beginning. As far as quality concerns, I don't, as long as you know that any kind of online or digitally enhanced teaching is not doing what you do in the classroom online, but a completely different thing and created in a different way, there shouldn't be any quality concerns.
Fair point. I had planned to ask a question about the concerns about cybersecurity and security of data and identity, but when I look at the poll, it hardly featured as a concern among the audience. So maybe we'll park that one. And maybe
but it has been concern with students.
Okay, carry on.
So a friend of mine is the international officer of students in Iceland, and in Europe, this is not that big of a problem, but in other regions of the world, students are being monitored through their ethereal networks, and if they, for the some of the online test programs, so that you take a test online at home, and they monitor the screen, every move you do, and they monitor your eye movements as well. And this has been a very big concern, mostly in Asia, but the concern has, like, for the European Students' Union, ESU, this was a very serious problem that needed to be addressed, that this type of technology does not come to Europe, because it is breaking a lot of ethical barriers following your eye movement on the screen.
Okay, so you may well be pointing out that our audience is not representative of the learning population in Europe, that it's fundamentally staff. So maybe it is an issue. So Jan, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think we need to differentiate between privacy, as Kolbrún said, and information security, both of which are entangled but not identical. And so in terms of information security or cybersecurity, we had a couple of successful attacks on German universities during the last 2 years, which in some cases proved catastrophic. So the universities were basically offline and could not do anything for a couple of weeks. And so information security is a very urgent subject for many universities in Germany, whereas privacy is, as you probably know, is a highly regarded subject in Germany too. So we would never do online proctoring, as Kolbrún described, for our students. So we are very sensitive with these issues, and privacy and information security both need to go hand in hand with all our assessment and teaching. But obviously, cybersecurity is an ongoing subject, and we also need the digital skills with teaching staff, with other staff, with students, to create a comprehensive, secure environment. And this is very complicated because we cannot force students not to use Instagram, for example, and to leak their data to any commercial platform they would like to, because they're not staff of our university, and so they can handle their data as they seem fit. And so we need to create awareness among students that some use of their own personal private data is maybe not advisable. And so this is part of what I would call digital skills, a digital awareness of their own identity and the privacy implications of sharing their data.
Right. Now, Nancy, of course, you have a global student population, so the issues raised a moment ago by Kolbrún might resonate with you as well.
We haven't really had a lot of issues in that way. We decided ourselves that proctoring was against the law in Spain. Okay, so we didn't do it. We did take like 5 pictures of the student during the exam. Well, okay, just to start out, our exams are always in-person exams, and we've only had online exams during COVID. All right. So during COVID, when we did the online exams, we had to implement a new system, and we took a few pictures just to check that it was the same person doing the exam throughout, and that seems to have been allowed. I don't really think you need to start with the assumption that students are going to try to deceive you all the time. That's ridiculous. All right. Most students want to do their work correctly and get their grade by themselves on their own with their effort. So I don't think you need to go through anything more than that. Before COVID, just to mention, I was at a meeting with one of our ministries where they told us that there was a new law that all the universities had to educate in all of their courses students regarding cybersecurity. we explained to them that it would take 2 years to add that into our university degree courses. And they said, oh dear. And we are kind of still working on that. So, yes.
Right. Now, I invited the audience to send us questions. And now, of course, they have sent us questions. The most highly voted one comes from Manuel João Costa, whom I'm pretty sure is the new member of the EUA steering committee from Minho. I guess I'm right there. And he just makes the question he put is around the matter of training the teachers. This concept, in fact, being based on an assumption that teachers do not need to learn from peers. Is the concept of training the teachers part of the problem, rather than adopting a view that teachers are trustworthy self-learners? Or have we've probably covered that already? Anybody want to make an extra comment on it? Nancy?
I would add, our university section that does courses, so it's not like we're getting trained, it's like we have a lot of peers who part of what they do is offer courses for the rest of the teachers. And so it's not that I'm sitting down in my office talking to another person about what they did, which I can also do, but I have other teachers who are telling me what they've done that worked and giving me courses about it. So I don't think it's necessarily either or training or sharing learning. It can be the same thing.
Okay. There's a question from Vanya Kruger. We're focusing on teaching, but how about our shift from teaching to learning? Should we focus more on digital learning than on digital teaching? How's that for a question? Kolbrún?
I, for example, do not have the necessary digital learning skills to be able to do distance learning. I was always an on-site student, and when things shifted last year, I found myself in a terrible crisis of not being able to set the time and like have the learning environment at home that I am so used to at the university. So these digital learning skills are also important for students because not everyone has them, and I'm one of those. In my studies, almost 90% of students are digital learners, and 10% are on-site. So the way of teaching is quite flexible. So most of the lectures might be online, but I always had the opportunity to go to class. And when that shut down, I found myself in like a pothole. Where do I go from here? How can I study if I don't have my learning in like my usual learning environment? So I suppose it has been the same for teachers, that not being able to talk to their class directly and so on. So yeah, someone answered a question.
Okay.
Popped up, but
It's something here on my screen as well.
No, I tried to, but I couldn't for some reason. I don't.
There is a question for you, Nancy. Have I lost it? There are a number, but one of them.
I'm seeing it, but I'm going to try. Okay, now I think I can answer it. I'll go ahead and answer that. Yes.
Okay, but before you do, a question it's put to you, Nancy, but I think it's worth voicing for the audience. The common challenge of feedback for where you have very, very large groups. Approaches, tips and tricks from distance education on how we might begin to do it more effectively on, I guess, traditional campuses.
Sure. Well, actually, what we do have in our online courses are different fora where, for example, I can create a forum for discussing each one of the readings that I have in a course. and I can put questions there, the students discuss, I answer each discussion point of a student, and we have a conversation that can go on. It's not synchronous, but everybody enters whenever they can, and they talk and answer, and that's really the way of doing it. Now, do the students all enter into and do it? It depends. There's one course where I feel that this discussion is particularly important, and about, let's see, about at least 25% of the students' grade has to do whether they participate in a meaningful way, not just saying, oh, I agree with the discussions. So as soon as it's part of the grade to participate in these online discussions, everybody is concerned with participating and thinking about what they want to say and entering into the discussion and the conversation with other people.
Does it take machine learning? Jan?
No, I would like to add something to what Kolbrún and Nancy just said about social interaction, because digital learning basically can be very isolated learning, but it doesn't need to be. The challenge is to transfer the traditional group-based on-site learning to the digital sphere. Because if you can create that level of social interaction needed for actual learning together, then digital learning can prove very successful for large portions of students. Whereas if you just put students in their individual rooms and they need to interact only with the material, then obviously this won't work for many students. So social interaction is key, whether it be on-site or digital.
That triggers a question, and I think Michael Gable's question on the screen picks it up. Interaction. There was reference yesterday in the discussion to the teacher as the lonely cowboy, I guess lonely cowgirl, where the classroom is the empire of the teacher. Collaborative teaching and peer-supported teaching, is that a way forward, and is that a means by which, in fact, teacher training would naturally happen? Any comment?
Well, there is a model. It's called a virtual exchange, and it connects two groups of students from different universities, and of course with different teachers together. And those teachers do collaborate in creating the course together. And so this is a model that works quite well, because not only the students learn together with other students from a different country, etc., but also the teachers learn from different perspectives on their own field.
Our opening comment was about culture change. Are we seeing culture change on our campuses where teachers are now open to this form of sharing and collaboration? And are we encouraging it enough in our institutions?
Well, most of our courses actually are led by teaching teams, because we have a lot of students, okay? So, for example, there can be a psychology course that might have 6,000 students. You can't expect one teacher to take care of 6,000 students. So we have a teaching team that are different teachers, and they collaborate on creating the course. They collaborate on attending to the forums, on correcting exercises, on correcting exams, on interacting, on putting different recorded bits on. So it's kind of a way of life for us, and it's the norm for us, really. It also allows for things like a teacher can go on a sabbatical, and there's the rest of the teaching team to maintain the continuity of the course. So I think it's a very useful device for this, and it also makes you rethink things. I was in a teaching team with a much more senior professor who retired. So then I became the senior professor in the teaching team, and a younger professor has come in to join me, and he asks me questions that make me rethink the way we're doing things, and it's really good.
I think teamwork in this sense is the way forward, since it builds this community and trust between teachers to share their knowledge and not stand alone with a whole class of 6,000 students. I can't imagine what that must be like. Because if you're a group, a team, you're working towards the same goal, and you are able to share your concerns and get valuable insight from others. And I think team and peer work is extremely important in teaching as well as learning, that you have a peer with you that you can confide in, like, oh, this course material is very hard, can you help me with it? So it's the same with students and teachers in this regard. We all need someone to talk to who relates to our problems.
Okay. Just going into the Q&A section here again. 6 votes for a question from Lára Puhalak. There seems to be a danger that teaching or fostering digital skills takes priority over self-management or other academic skills. How can we avoid this? Is the post-pandemic discussion of evolution in our mission being hijacked too much by this phenomenon?
I feel like learning digital skills will only improve your teaching abilities, because when you learn new skills, it's not like the old skills just fade away. You still have all of those the teaching, training, and academic knowledge that you have. It's not going anywhere if you learn new teaching skills. So my point of view is that it's not. Where is the question again? I lost it.
It's near the top. Let me see. I've just. Oh Lord, where have I lost it myself?
Maybe it was marked answered, and so it.
Yeah.
Oh. I feel like with learning new skills, your old skills don't vanish on spot. So it should only be enhancing your current knowledge.
Well, I think what Laura was referring to is the natural rivalry for students' time, because they have the curriculum and then they have this large field of future skills, which can be anything, among them digital skills. And in the end, the day of a typical student only has 24 hours with maybe 3 hours of sleep. And so it has to fit in somehow. And the challenge for universities is, how do we provide students with a comprehensive set of skills, both related to their curriculum and to general skills, future skills for their life after university. And this is something that we cannot really solve, because there's too much that students should learn. And we cannot provide everything, but we have to focus on what we think is most important as part of their studies at our university. And I think digital skills rank quite high on that list.
Thanks, Jan. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. Each of you came, I'm sure, with some messages you wanted to convey, and hoped that you would be asked the question to allow you to say your piece, your passionate piece. Set for success. What's your passionate statement on that topic? Or did you come with a view that all the questions would be easy? And who wants to go first? Nancy.
I'll go first, but I'm going to emphasize something that I already said.
That's good.
Professors need time to be able to do their work properly. Okay? And if our work is going to be, let's say, a third research, a third teaching, and a third bureaucratic stuff. We can't really do any of those things properly. We need more support.
And perhaps a call for workload allocation models that are meaningful. Okay. Jan or Kolbrún? Your passionate statement.
Well, my passionate statement, maybe it's not the perfect statement for my role, but students need time too. As I just said, students also need to allocate their time between the curriculum, in a narrow sense, and other skills they require later on in life. And so for both teachers and students, we need some sort of time management built up together. And of course, we need collaboration between teachers and between teachers and students in acquiring and defining the required skills.
I think for me, my passion is mostly the students' voice and concerns are heard and actually listened to, because we do have quite a lot of things to say if we are given the opportunity. And for students' associations to be invited to the table of discussions, that is a great step forward in our advocacy. And I think thought it was great to hear, Nancy, that you have a student association and you called them
representatives.
Yeah, representatives.
There are student representatives in every degree and in every faculty.
I think it's very important that to have representatives to be able to represent their class and their peers in that way. And that is my main passion at the moment, that students' voices are heard and that we are invited to voice our opinions in that way.
Great. That was a good closing comment. I was asked to summarize the session, but of course that's impossible. But I just scribbled down a couple of words that kept coming up. Quality must be the objective, no matter how we teach or how we learn. Peer support is critical. Partnership, collaboration, sharing, teamwork is the way forward. And incentives, of course, must always be aligned with what we're trying to achieve. So they're pretty common thematic statements from this session. Can I thank all three of you for sharing your time and your wisdom with us? Jan, Düsseldorf, or Cologne, Nancy in Madrid, and Kolbrún in Reykjavik. Great to see you, and hope to see you back next year. And I have to now move on to the next item on my script, which is, of course, to thank a lot of people in a closing few minutes. So, au revoir to the three of you. And I will now focus on bringing an end to this fifth European Learning and Teaching Forum. And I hope that each of you enjoy the event as best you can in this rather socially limited environment. But I hope that each of you got at least one new idea, maybe one new inspiration for innovation, and maybe found a new candidate for collaboration for the coming year. Obviously, there are many people to thank for the organizing this event, not least you in the audience for your dynamic inputs and participation. And I thank all the speakers for generously sharing their ideas and their learning and their inspiration with us. And I thank the moderators for keeping the discussion moving along and for occasionally challenging, maybe sometimes provoking some humor. I thank too my colleagues on the steering committee who helped shape the program, review the submissions for the forum, and I thank all of you who made submissions, whether they were selected or not, because your continuing support and engagement is essential to sustain the vitality of this community. I also thank the thematic peer groups whose work was highlighted over the past 2 days. And of course, we will be publishing the final reports of the TPGs in the coming month or so. I thank my colleagues on the EUA Secretariat staff who invested a lot of hard work initially preparing a forum for in-person participation in Bilbao, and then of course under pressing time constraints had to pivot, I think is the word, and redesigned the program to fit a virtual location. In that regard, I must mention Helena Peterbauer, who has been the principal architect of the forum. Vielen Dank, Helena. And of course, Tia Lukala played a part in the early days of the process before she departed to join the OECD in Paris. And more recently, Maria Kello, who joined us from ENCA as the new unit director. I thank both of you for your contributions. Michael Gable, Therese Zhang, for bringing lots of experience to bear on the program and even in the questions and answers. And on the technical side, I thank Aurelie Kline and all colleagues in Brussels. Under normal circumstances, I would have the pleasure of distributing flowers and chocolates at this stage. So we'll simply have to make do with the mention of them, or the downsides of cyberspace. I must briefly relate some changes in the leadership of the forum, evidence of the passing of time. 2 colleagues are leaving after 4 years of service. I thank Professor Ian Dunn, who is the provost at Coventry University in the UK, and Professor Cornelia Freitag, who is the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs at Ruhr University in Bochum, Germany. I'm sure the committee will miss you, and big thanks and vielen Dank to you too. There are replacements. Pleased to say we have 2 new members of the committee, as I said yesterday, selected from 33 applications. And I'm delighted to confirm that Professor Stephanie Marshall, who is the Vice Principal for Education at Queen Mary University of London, and Professor Manuel João Costa, who is the Pro-Rector at the University of Minho in Portugal, they will be joining the group later today. One further change, after 4 years of delivering boring opening and closing speeches at the forum, I've decided to spare you in the future and will make way for a more competent leader later today. And but it's been a privilege to champion this agenda at EUA over the last 4 years. But I will hand over later today to Professor Anne Leckey, who is the newly elected EUA board member from Germany. She is the rector at the University of Applied Sciences at Magdeburg-Stendal, and I wish Anne the best of luck in the coming years in the chair. I'll close with 2 technical announcements. The first one reminds you that the recordings of the sessions and all the materials will remain available on this platform until Sunday, the 20th of February at 9 a.m. CET. That's this Sunday. So you've got to get up early on Sunday for your last look at the recordings. And I encourage all of you to participate in the feedback survey. It'll be sent out after the event. And there will be a fee waiver for the next forum for somebody among you who submits an email address as part of the submission. So a full fee waiver for the conference in 2023. And that forum will, in capital letters, will be an in-person event in Bilbao. So I wish you a safe journey home, or a nice weekend, since we're in cyberspace. And if you enter the lobby for one last time, there's a nice message there from our host next year, the rector of the University of Deusto in Bilbao. So, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, slán, and thank you for joining us for the 2022 forum. Goodbye to everybody. Thank you.